This is the Akasvani Imphal in a weekly program of English Talk. Today we have an interaction with Pia Francesca Sharma, data science student at New York University, United States, with our interviewer Kakchingtabam Ritesh Sharma.
We have someone all the way from United States. I'm not going to say her name. First of all, thank you so much for giving an opportunity to interact with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, a brief introduction about yourself to let the listeners know better.
Yes, of course I can. So my name is Pia Sharma. I'm 20 years old and I'm currently a student at New York University, majoring in data science with a minor in South Asian studies. My dad is Raju Sharma and he is from Manipur and came to the United States to study at the University of Stony Brook in New York. And I'm born and raised in New York City and have grown up there, lived there ever since.
We really want to know how the education system of US works and how different it is from the Indian system. Can you tell us how and where you start your schooling and where you stand now from where you start?
That's a great question. So I started my education in kindergarten. I went to public school from kindergarten up until grade 12. So basically the way that it works, especially in New York, it's organized by zone. If you live in a certain district, the state will place you in the school within that zone. Luckily, I was fortunate enough to live in an affluent neighborhood. I was placed in a public school, yes, but because of the neighborhood, it received a lot of funding, and it all kind of depends on where you live and the address that you put on your application when you apply to go to school. So I went to a school called PS 199, PS standing for public school, from kindergarten until 5th grade. Then you actually apply, kind of like college, you apply to a middle school from grade 6 to 8. And then from there, you have to apply again to your high school. This sounds kind of like a tedious process, but honestly, reflecting on it, I think it prepared me really well to then apply for private school in college, which is where I go now.
You mentioned about public schools, and we have like government schools supported by the government, and we have private schools. Can you differentiate that a bit?
Yes, I should have said, apologies for not clarifying before. Public school is completely free, sponsored by the government. All the funding that it receives come from taxes collected by the government and then reallocated to the school. So there can be a pretty stark difference between the quality in education of government or public schools versus private schools. Some private schools in New York City I know can go for as much as $50,000 US per year. I have some friends who have 2 siblings and they all went to private school. That's $150,000 US every single year, which is very expensive and unaffordable for most people. Yes, there can be a big difference in quality. And I was lucky enough, again, to go to a school where it did receive a lot of funding based on the neighborhood and the people and the taxes that they paid around me. But there are some public schools that don't get enough funding. The teachers are not paid enough. There's not enough textbooks or resources for the kids to learn. Technology is a big thing now. Tech is a big part of education these days, as it should be. And it's unfortunate that there are a lot of public schools where the students aren't given the technology and the resources where they can learn the same as a student who can afford to pay $50,000 a year. And to build on that point, private high schools, you're not just paying for the resources that they give you while you're in school, you're also paying for college counselors and the connections and network that they have to Ivy League top schools in the country. They're actually called feeder schools, and you'll see maybe 1 or 2 kids from a very large public school get into Harvard University or MIT, Princeton, etc. However, you go to a feeder school and you see what kind of colleges these kids go to. 20 kids at Harvard, 20 kids at Princeton. And it's all because these schools have the money to afford these connections to get their kids into better schools, even if both students are equally capable.
That's an interesting part of the story. But what about the quality of the content that are included in the book, the resources that you have, and the quality of the teachers, how good it is in public schools, and then compared to the one that you have in private schools?
Yes, definitely. I think actually, this is my opinion, it's less about the content and the physical textbooks that we're reading, the material, and more about the quality of teaching. Teachers really care about their students. They're going to make sure that they learn and they know what they're supposed to know and that they're ready for the next year when it comes. Schools that don't pay their teachers enough money because they don't have the money to pay actually de-incentivizes the teachers to care about their students. If you show your employees, doesn't matter if it's a school or a large corporation company, if you pay your employees, they will care about their job. They will do their job better. So I think that's a big issue in education today, that some teachers deserve, a lot of teachers deserve to be paid more when they're not. I've even heard stories of teachers having to buy the pencils and paper and notebooks, supplies for their students with the money from their own pockets because the school can't give it to them. And it's not fair.
That kind of thing also happened in the United States?
Yeah, it actually happens all the time. Even though I mentioned that I lived in a nice neighborhood to go to a school that had the resources, even I found my teachers were doing this stuff. Is only happening in the public school system. Most public schools even rely on donations given by the parents of the students when they need more money to pay for the supplies. In private school, if you're getting $50,000 per student, running out of money is never an issue. So that's kind of the difference in what is within reach for public school versus private school.
It's a thing that we see here in India as well as in our state. Parents, they tend to care a lot. When they reach the 10th standard and the 12th standard, we have a specific seriousness that the career is going to be decided after that. Is there something like that in the United States?
100% yes. I would say a lot of parents associate the success of their child's academic career with what college they get into and what college they go to. And that's not to say that if you go to a public college, community college, etc., that doesn't mean that you'll have a bad career or you won't be successful, but it means that you're going to have to work 10 times harder than the kid who got into Harvard or Princeton. Yeah, any Ivy League, honestly. The year, I would say 12, I think is a lot more important than year 10 back at home, because that's the year that students start putting their college applications together. And then by the end of year 12, you hear and decide where you'll be for the next 4 years. And in terms of where college sets you up for a career, once you reach college, you're going to be doing internships over the summer. I just completed mine. And a lot of companies, when recruiting student interns, first thing that they'll look at is the school. Is your school prestigious enough to work at our company? And there's a lot of reputation and honestly trust behind your school's name. Once you put that on your resume, it's kind of your brand and associated with you. And then those internships then lead to full-time jobs and so on. That's why people place such importance on what college, what name school that you go to, because it really is a big deal. And I don't think a lot of people like to admit that, because you don't want to say, oh, well, this person didn't get into so-and-so college, she won't be successful. That's not true, but that person will have to work harder. The person who got into the name brand college will have an easier time having a successful career.
Good to know about that. But how do you get into the Ivy League, the brand colleges that you mentioned? How do you get into that? How difficult it is for a low income group? Is there an exam for that? How the system work there?
That's a great question. So the main exam, there's actually two. So one is called the SAT, one is called the ACT. And you can take either or. The SAT is out of 1,600 points. The ACT is out of 36. The SAT is more math focused and the ACT is more English focused. So if you're stronger in one subject, you take the one that matches. This score on your exam gets submitted along with your application to college, to every college you apply to. And you can look up any American university and look up the average range or the average range of the score of these exams that they accept in their students. I know Harvard is probably 33 to 36 out of 36 as the average score that they accept. So in terms of standardized testing and exams, you have to get a near perfect score to get into the Ivy Leagues. And honestly, even that is not enough. You need to have many, many extracurriculars. Preferably, you've taken college courses. Maybe you've started your own business or written your own, published a novel, or done a few internships before college to even be considered. And honestly, even if you have all of that, you can still be rejected, even if you're qualified. And it's just because of the sheer number of people who apply to these schools because they're so sought after.
That's a very difficult one. And when do you get to decide what I'm going to do? Like, for example, if you want to become a doctor or an engineer or an architect, when does that thing come? And when do you get to decide that?
So it varies depending on the industry that you're trying to pursue. If you want to be a doctor, for example, undergraduate, or you guys call it bachelor's here, you are pre-med and you have a pre-med track. So you have to take certain courses like biology, chemistry, physics, calculus, etc., to then be qualified enough to go and apply for med school after you finished your bachelor's and you have your bachelor's degree. If you want to work in government, it depends on the job, actually. I know there's a famous exam here in India that you have to take, and it's really hard and prestigious. It depends on what government job you want back in the US, but you don't have to take an exam that I am aware of. I could be wrong about this because I don't intend to work for the government, but you usually would study political science in your bachelor's degree, or economics or international relations. Those are the really common majors if you want to work in government. And then you would probably intern at a senator or some kind of representative's office. Then you start applying for jobs. There's no big exam the way that there actually is for becoming a doctor. You have your MCAT exam, I think it's called. It's very, very hard, but I have not heard anything about a really, really difficult government exam.
Where you're studying now and how good it is and why you want to study there?
I study data science at NYU, or New York University, and it's actually a great place to study data science. Not to brag, but they actually were the first school to create the data science major as the master's program about 13 years ago. So it's a very, very new subject. And then 8 years ago, they made the undergrad/bachelor's major of data science, which is what I do now. So there are only about 6 graduated classes who currently have a degree in data science. It's a very small community and it's very young. You know, we hear all of this hype about AI, machine learning. All of that is data science, and it's so young. It's still in its infancy. So I thought that this is a great time to get in while it's still hot. You know, there's all this talk also about how computer science is kind of overdone. The job market is really oversaturated, at least back at home. It's because everybody knows the same skills because everybody wanted to study computer science. There's such a demand for coders. Now that everyone knows how to do it, AI can code for you for free. You don't have to hire anybody. So now data science kind of combines the coding with statistical judgment, which cannot be replicated by a computer. That's why I'm very lucky to be studying what I study and where I study it.
Okay, that's really nice. And is it difficult to get into a university like NYU? Sometimes in order to get into a prestigious university here, it's difficult. You have to go through exams and all. But for you, how was it?
NYU was actually not my first choice. I had my heart set on going to Columbia University, which is an Ivy League. I actually studied at Columbia University for 3 summers in high school before I applied to college. And in addition to that, I had an almost perfect GPA. I was the founder of the newspaper club at my school. I danced at one of the most prestigious dance companies for 11 years. I had a lot of, academic and non-academic extracurriculars and interests that I think shaped me to be a well-rounded applicant. I still don't know why I didn't get into Columbia, but once I got rejected, I actually had to pull my NYU application together in 24 hours to make the deadline, and I did it. And a few weeks later, I found out that I got in, which was really relieving because I kind of, my dad came all the way here across the world to give me a better life, and I felt that I owed it to him to get into a really good school, at least a better school than he got into. Okay. No shade to his school, but I felt that I owed him that. So I was really, really happy and grateful, and I felt lucky that he gave me this opportunity to be where I am, and also proud of myself that I was able to work hard enough to get to where I am now.
What kind of prospect do you expect from studying a subject like this? Where do you see yourself when you are studying this particular subject?
I think that's a great question. I think a lot of people who study data science and computer science kind of have this preconceived notion that if you're not working at Microsoft, if you're not working at Amazon, then you failed. I personally don't actually care at all about the name brand of the company. I think my 3 top priorities would probably be company culture. I want to work for a company that I actually enjoy the work and enjoy the people. Obviously, I would want a high-paying salary to get a return on all of the work and money I spend on my education. I would prefer to be doing the job and the work that I would want rather than being at a prestigious company. For example, what I want to do now, and I'm sure I'll change my mind at some point, but right now I want to become a product manager, which is basically it's the equivalent of a producer of a movie in technology. So the product manager is the person coordinating with the marketing team, the development team, stakeholders, basically everybody involved on deploying a certain feature or entire product, tech product, and getting it to users and making sure that the users actually like the product. Right. I just finished internship in data analytics, which is similar to data science. There's a very dotted gray line. Nobody knows what the difference is. I would rather work as a product manager at a smaller, lesser known company than work as a data analyst for Microsoft. And it's purely because the work is more interesting. I think people place too much importance on status than actually doing the job that you worked so hard to do. And also, I think that there's more room for growth once you start in a spot where you like and you can move around different companies doing the same thing. That's a lot easier than to go from, a really prestigious company and then try and move up the ranks when you don't actually know the skills. It's better to learn the skills, then go for the big company than to start at the big company with no skills.
There are so many to talk about, but in order to end the conversation or the interview that we are having, what kind of suggestion would you give it to young people or young students who would like to pursue a career like yours in data science?
That's a lot of pressure because honestly, hearing that question, I'm thinking to myself, I need the advice, Okay. I'm still in the place where I need the advice. But I would say, don't do it for the money and do it if you actually enjoy what you're studying. Before I even started college, because I already told myself, oh, well, Pia, you're not good at math. You can't do that. It was only until I found the love for math and coding that I considered going into data science. You can't choose, let's say you study English, but you want to make money. You can't choose data science and then force yourself to love math and force yourself to love coding. I think it's important to do what you love because that's what you'll be the best at. And I know that's kind of cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, I think.
Pia, it's a great experience and it's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope we have the opportunity to interact with you again when you come back here in India.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope to be back really soon. And when I am, I'm looking forward to our second interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, you have just listened to an interview with Pia Francesca Sharma, data science student at New York University, United States, with our interviewer, Kakchingtabam Ritesh Sharma. We will be back next week with a new interview. Until then, take care and stay happy.